Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Vandy. So back with another Card Fight Vanguard deck profile. If you enjoyed them, like, comment, subscribe, and start, shall we? This time we're doing my long overdue Stoicheia Zorga post-festival collection deck profile. So I know a while ago someone asked me if I was ever going to do Orphist and Zorga deck profiles, and the reason I said no to both of those, or at least the festival collection, is because I didn't really change much. I mean, Orphist, I literally just changed the grade 3 and that was it. As for Zorga, I changed the grade 3 and then just like the order in, and then I changed around the order numbers, but like otherwise it pretty much stayed the same as my set 4 deck. So I wasn't really planning on doing this deck profile, except with my upload schedule, and because when I do one of either Orphist or Zorga, I have to do the other because I feel like, you know, you have to. So yeah, here it is, my Zorga Festival Collection deck. I didn't change anything with set 6 because honestly nothing in set 6 seems interesting enough for me to like run it for Zorga. So let's go and get started, shall we? First up, we have our starter in Dream Nibbling, grade 0 boost, 5k shields, escape base. All in wrote upon, if you win second, draw a card. Standard starter, special about it's just when you wrote upon, and you win second, you draw one. You know, his art is kind of grotesque to me, so I don't really like looking at him. Thankfully, he is the starter, and then the second I do anything, he gets out of my soul, and I never have to see his ass again. So, yeah, take that as you will. This is one of the times where I say, like, you can run the starter you want to, and honestly, this is one of the times where I would change the starter, but, Ride line. So yeah, Dream Nibbling, the starter. Then we have our triggers, 1 over trigger and Source Dragon DD of Blessings plus Favor. Grade 0 boost 50 shield, 5k power, over trigger, move 1 over trigger in your deck. When reveals a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one of these, plus 1 for the turn. And if you reveal it during draw activation effect, which is draw a card, choose one of these, plus 1 crit for the turn, or everyone gets plus 10. And if your damage zone has the same number, or if your opponent's damage zone or more, choose a card from your damage zone, heal it. So basically an everything bagel. Now this over, specifically in Zorga, has been pulling its weight, so to say. Let's just say this. For some reason, I can tell when this over is going to get checked whenever I play this deck. Always, I will be like, the over's at the top, so I don't mill that turn. Where's my drive checks? Over. Even if there's 20 cards left in my deck, and normally the over is not in my favor with those odds, somehow, this is the deck I can see it. I don't know why. I just find it funny this is the deck I can predict when the over is going to get sacked. Then we have our normal triggers, 3 draw triggers on Serene Maiden Lena, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k power, continues guard target, response Vanguard, grade 3 plus 5k shield, cool. Nice 10k shield. You don't really need the draws because you can typically make a board out of nothing, but let me tell you this. There was a game where my opening hand was a PG and 4 orders. For the sake of experimenting and because my friend and me were making a joke out of it, I decided to keep that hand. I still won that game. But I want to say this. I have learned something about Zorga. That game put a lot of things into perspective, and I have learned that this deck is good the way it is because of that. Even if your whole hand is orders. Because, by the way, guess what? That entire game, not until my 4th grade 3 turn did I draw a unit that wasn't a trigger, an over, or a persona ride. That whole game, I saw 1 persona ride. Everything else was orders and triggers. 2 triggers, some god number of orders, 1 PG, and a pure persona ride. Until I hit second grade 3 turn, where I was able to finally draw a normal unit. I'm not even joking with you. That is the level of bullshit I had to deal with, and I still won that game. 3 copies of draws, 4 copies of Frenzied Harris, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power, front trigger into guard circle for your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 gears plus 5k shield. Yeah, that front definitely came in handy for the few units I did have on my board during that game. And then our crit and Inspiring Maiden Alno, who was not one of the triggers I showed up in my hand. Grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power, critical trigger, auto writ, at the end of the battle, boost it, put it to slow, 2 because plus 2 for the turn. Cool, really nice. You draw check, it's a crit, and also she goes to slow and gets plus 2k. Ever since Leonore has come out, for some reason Alon has been showing up a lot more lately. I don't know why. Maybe Leonore has inspired her to just start being sacked more, but all around, Alon's a nice crit. Definitely helps out a lot in this deck where soul is actually a very important resource, so I like having the crit at 4. Then we have 4 copies of LG Pixie, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k base. Every time I look at this thing, I see something different. Right now I see like a fairy or like, you know, one of those pirate ships that has like a girl on the front, typically a mermaid. For some reason, that's what this makes me think of, and that's what I see normally. But for some reason, on occasions, I will see like an anglerfish or like a ghost dragon type of thing. I don't know why. It's just because I never see the face, and the way it looks like it can be a ghost dragon. So someone in the comments tell me, am I the only one that sees it, or is someone else in the comments crazy with me? Either way, yeah, I don't like the effect heals. Too situational, especially in this deck where, you know, I like to have something be very consistent, and when my mills are like 50-50, unless it's the over, and, you know, all the other stuff, and the orders being my only hand cards, yeah, I like to have the consistency of knowing I'm not fucked when I have 5k difference, because guess what? I sacked a lot of heals that game into my hand, and if I actually had those effect heals, I would have lost. Just saying. So, you know, when push comes to shoves, these heals won me more games, this specific heal won me more games than the effect heals would have, so take that as you will for. Then we have our grade 1s. So first up, 4 copies of Rogue Headhunter. So a lot of you, I don't know if people still run Rogue Headhunter, but I know a lot of you are definitely going to like argue with me on something I'm about to say about Rogue Headhunter. For the people that did run it and do still run it, grade 1 boost 5k show DK base, continues rear guard. If you play in order this turn, he gets +5. Cool, doesn't have to be with Alchemy Magic, meaning you can grade 2 rush your opponent and just to be pretty good, which is what I like to do in this deck. And then auto when it's placed on rear, the next time you would Alchemy Magic in order and play it this turn, reduce that cost by counterblast 1. Reduce it from the total cost, does not countercharge even if it becomes negative. So if you play multiple of them, yeah, you countercharge a bunch. Here's my thing. Rogue Headhunter's countercharge skill is the most useless skill Zorga has ever pumped out. And what I mean by this is in my entire time of playing Zorga, I can think of 3 games that this actually came in useful. Every other game I didn't need this. Even that game where most of my hand was just counterblast orders, and this is again the game that I'm referring to having like the opening hand where it's just a PG and then 4 orders flat. Even that game where I had to rely on a bunch of counterblast orders and a Rogue Headhunter would have been helpful, and I still didn't see one in my drop zone at least for until second grade 3 turn. I was able to win and manage my counterblast and still be able to basically do everything and be perfect about it. Rogue Headhunter, regardless of how you see it, in terms of the countercharge, is the most useless thing that Zorga has pumped out. But that 5k though, that 5k does fucking work. Just that 5k for the grade 2 rush, 5k for when you Zorga your opponent when they're at grade 2. All-around Rogue Headhunter is good for that skill alone. Countercharge skill. I run it in the situation where it's going to possibly be useful, but typically it's never on board for me to use it, so or ever in my hand for me to take advantage of it. So for Rogue Headhunter, see that as you will. Then onto our grade 1s, or not onto our grade 1s, so onto our PG, 4 copies of Planet Prevent Dragon. Yeah, you came in very helpful. I'm really glad I didn't replace you. Grade 1 boost, 0 shields, 6k base, continuous sentinel, 4 summons in deck, and auto put on guard circle. Choose one of your units that cannot be in the battle, and if your hand is drawn more cards, you card from hand discard it. So standard PG, not special about it. If you don't know what that means when this only one of the cards in your hand when you place on guard circle, you don't have to discard, which is really nice because that means you can be as aggressive as you want and still not lose the hand cards when you're doing PGs, because that means you can still survive big attacks. And that again, referring to the order game, is very helpful. I don't know why I feel like it's important for me to say this, because I don't think Zorga players, especially because I think Zorga players somehow run less orders than I do, which I don't believe, but like, if normal Zorga players do run less orders than I do, then I feel like it's an important deal for me to tell anyone that doesn't run a lot of orders because they're afraid of that happening, that if you are a good enough player, you can handle it. And now I don't want to say that as an insulting form, but I want to say it this way. I do not consider myself a good player. I'm just saying. So, like, me winning with just 4 orders, and 2 of those are orders I never use for very specific reasons. So if me, with basically 2 dead hand cards in my opening hand, and then none of them are good calling targets, and I don't see an actual good target to call, and what I mean by actual is just a fucking normal unit in general that isn't a PG or a Persona ride, until second grade 3 turn. And if I manage to just win that game somehow, without trigger sacking bullshit galore, I feel like pro players should be able to do that too. So if any pro player says, oh, you don't want to do that in Zorga, look at me. Look right at me, because I did it somehow, and I don't believe it. And I did it out of a joke, so 4 of PG. Then we have our last grade 1. 1 copy in the right deck, none in the main deck of Ranker Chain because you can loop them back to board. Dude, this thing came in really helpful when I couldn't call rear guards because it was only him, Hush Dragon, and the starter I could call. At some point, I had to just start calling triggers. Grade 1 boost by Kashoda K base, active and once per turn, soul blast 1, draw 2 cards, choose up to 1 order from your hand, discard. If you did not discard, choose 2 cards from your hand, discard them. So technically, if you have an order in your hand, you don't have to discard it. Instead, you can just choose discard 2 to fill up your drop zone, but like, I never really saw the appeal of that because don't you have to raise more resources to get the stuff out of drop instead of just normal calling them? Like, if they get a benefit from being called from drop, sure, I get it, but like, why not just go through the efforts of normal calling them? Because then you save hand cards and you also save resources for calling them back. That's something I never understood. And then continues rear guard. If you play an order this turn, he gets +2. So cool. 10k base, really nice. A lot of you are probably questioning why am I not running that on hit grade 1. Here's my thing with it. I hate that card. That is in my opinion, the worst grade 1 that Zorga has. Like, not even Rogue Headhunter. I think that's the worst grade 1, because my issue with it is, it has to hit. And while it's not necessarily bad in Zorga, the way I play Zorga, they are never going to let that hit unless it goes behind Van. Every one of my rear guards are typically hitting for things that people would guard if they were a normal person and if they didn't want to die, because I push out numbers when I know I'm going to kill you. So, you know, they're not going to fucking take the attack, so I have to put it behind Vanguard. Except typically something that has bigger power to make my Vanguard more dangerous, because my opponent knows I have crits in deck. So, you know, I don't like running that card, especially because like I have to have 2 orders in drop, and I don't like binding them more than once a turn. So like there's that. If you want to run that grade 1, go ahead, get rid of Heroic Headhunter for it, but like I prefer the power over the 50-50 on hit skill. So yeah, 1 of Ranker Chain in the ride deck, that's our grade 1s. I mean, we have the orders, but we'll get to those later. Then move on to our grade 2s. 3 copies of Inheritance Made in Handrino. So on my last Zorga deck, someone commented smartly, by the way. I'm not going to say that they're dumb, because they're not. That was like a very smart analytical decision, except the thing I find funny about it is they were trying to apply like competitive logic to a deck that wasn't supposed to be competitive. It was just supposed to be a deck made for fun. So I always laugh in my head when I think about it, like, why were you trying to like psychoanalyze something that didn't need psychoanalyzing? I'm pretty sure I said it very clear enough. It's not competitive. It's not. Why are you analyzing this? So anyways, he told me not to run Handrino, and then I had another conversation with other Zorga players. I said, run Handrino, so I don't fucking know what to do. But anyways, Handrino, my favorite grade 2 in this deck, when she's placed on Marie, may discard the top 3 cards of your deck. So it's either mill 3 or don't mill 3, basically. In the words of a very wise Grand Blue player that happens to be my friend, who I greatly question a lot whenever he says this, not deck thinning is deck winning, but like, what was it? I don't remember his logic. But basically, it's the more you mill, the more likely you are to see a trigger, even if you continuously mill triggers. Would you know what is true? Because many of the games I sack the over with her is the games where her ability makes me mill 3 triggers. So, you know, 3 triggers are the equivalent to the over, I guess. And then act weird. When tired of this unit until end of turn, the next time you Soul Blast, or the next time you use Alchemy Magic and play it, you may choose not to pay all the Soul Blast costs. So that's good, because a lot of the times this deck gets into Soul problem. Dude, I can tell you what, the deck never had a Soul problem until that order game. That game with all those orders, fuck, I ran into so much of a Soul problem. Thankfully, I eventually saw Alana, and I was able to fix it just before I ran into a Soul problem, so I could keep playing. But holy fuck, did I ever realize, like, Dead Sea Spiritualist Zorga genuinely sucks, because he has to, like, cost a Soul Blast. If you don't have a Soul Blast, the deck dies immediately. At that moment, I was genuinely considering, is the OG Zorga better? Was he better because he didn't cost a Soul Blast? So, yeah, you know, Handrino all around is really good. She definitely would have helped in that game. I mean, she did end up helping in the end, because when I finally drew her, I milled the top 3, and then the next card was the over. So, yeah, Handrino all around is a nice grade 2. I like her. She's amazing. I see her enough running her at 3 of, so why not keep her at 3 of? Then we have Shadow Cloak. Grade 2 and a 5k shield, 10k base. Autumn placed on rear from hand, so after 1 order card revealed. If your drop does not have a card the same name as it, discard it, shuffle your deck. Okay. Here's the thing. I hate running cards for one purpose and one purpose alone, especially when it has 2 skills. That second skill almost never goes off in this deck. And the reason for it is not because I don't want to use it. That's never the case, no. It's the fact that I only have 1 soul, or no soul, and I kind of need, and if I do have 1 soul, I need it for my next turn because I don't have a soul charger. That's always the case with Shadow Cloak. It's always, I don't have soul. Back in my old Zorga deck, I always had at least 1 extra soul. Like, that's one of the things I hate with Sea Spiritualist. That Zorga Soul Blast really fucks over the deck, in my opinion. It doesn't make the deck bad. It just is, in the situation where some certain cards don't show up, your deck dies, because you can't afford to keep using your skills. So like that's the situation we're in. And then auto rear when you're playing order Soul Blast 1, this thing gets +5, and if it's Alchemy Magic, you can choose another rear guard, bounce it to hand. So cool, you know, get guard power, get +5. All around getting orders and drop is very helpful for the early game rush to, you know, set up for Alchemy Magic. But honestly, yeah, that second skill, as much as I like it, rarely goes off just because like I can't use it with Zorga because too risky. Then our next card is our last grade 2. Grade 2 of the ride line, Black Tears Husk Dragon, 1 copy in the ride deck, no copies in the main deck. Grade 2 5k shield, 10k base. Every time I look at this, I never see the head. I only see this. I never see this. Anyways, autumn was placed on Van. Choose up to 1 normal order from your drop, put it to hand. Cool. So, you know, bouncing orders for discard fodder is really nice, because that basically means you can either get the order back from Ranker Chain, or you can just discard an order and then, like, bounce it back to, fix your ride deck, discard all around, pretty good grade 2 for that, and then continues rear guard if you play an order this turn, gets +5. You don't need to run this in your main deck because just like Raker Chain, you can Soul Blast it out a lot, and then you can just revive it with a bunch of orders. Like I said, Husk Dragon, a card I have never, not never, but I haven't called it to rear guard since set 2, was carrying that game. Because I Soul Blasted it out, called it, same with Raker Chain. Those 2 cards I have not needed to call to my rear guard since set 2, and they were carrying that fucking game. Not even kidding with you. Never underestimate the ride deck cards, because they will come back to bite you in the ass. One of in the ride deck, just because it's in the soul, and it goes to drop, doesn't mean you can't use it. This is Zorga we're talking about, aka knockoff Grand Blue. Everything in the drop zone is available to you. One of in the ride deck. Then we have 3 copies of Roaming Prism Dragon. Okay, here's the thing with this. This card, regardless if I run it at 4 or not, because I did try it once when it was at 4 or not, I learned a thing with this. It's either it will show up or it won't. No amount of milling gets it. I will mill it, but basically, it's either no copies will be seen at all, or all the copies will be seen, basically. That's how this card works for me. Doesn't matter if it's at 4, doesn't matter if it's at 2, doesn't matter if it's at 3, doesn't matter if it's at 1. If there's any number of it, it'll either be seen, all of them will either be seen that whole game, or they will all never be seen. I don't understand why. I think this dragon just hates me, or likes me a lot, I don't know. So anyways, Roaming Prism Dragon's a grade 3 200 persona, right? 13k base, 5k base. I remember this grade 3, I said it wasn't that good. I mean, my statement still kind of holds bearing, but, depends on where we're talking about. Auto drop, when you play an order, you may call this card to rear guard. If you call this card, perform one of the following. If you're not magic, you perform both instead. It gets +10 for the turn, and it gets +1 crit for the turn. So basically, how I like to do this, if you're on grade 2 rush, if you're willing to spend all your resources in terms of soul to rush your opponent down, you could effectively make a board, make a 13/23k double critical beat stick without triggers, and then just ram your opponent to 4 or 5 damage. How deadly is that, you ask? Pretty deadly, considering the next turn you just kill Roaming Prism Dragon, and then you just loop it back to board, except with stronger power, because you got Kanaka Magic this time. Yeah, Roaming Prism Dragon is that really good grade 3 that everyone wants to run in their Stoicheia deck, because it's just that good. You can run it in non-Zorga decks, but, yeah, honestly, I think just, I saw a really weird build of Leonorn. I'm not going to say that was a good build, because even the person agreed it was a weird build, but still. So 3 copies of Roaming Prism. He's just a good grade 3, so take that as you will. Then we have 2 in the main deck, 1 in the ride deck of Dead Sea Spiritualist Grave equals Zorga. He is in the same situation as roaming over here, where either all the copies will show up some way or another, or none of the copies will show up one way or another, so I don't really bother running the third one, especially because I need that space for orders. So Zorga is a grade 3 200 persona, right? 13k base. Continues ban if you did Alchemy Magic this turn, all your farm gets +5. That is the reason I keep him over the old one. I'm not even lying to you. That is the only reason he's here over the old one. If it wasn't for that, I would keep the old one, because of that game. That game puts so many things into perspective. I know I'm keep referring to it, but I feel like it's important to tell people that just because your deck is really consistent, because don't get me wrong, this Zorga deck is crazy consistent. It was consistent all that time. That was just a one-time thing. And remember, I didn't even mulligan. I could have mulliganed. I just chose not to because it was for a bit. But you have to remember that no matter how consistent your deck is, there will be those games where you get a very shit hand. If your deck cannot win with that shit hand, that doesn't mean it's bad. But that may be, it may put some things in perspective where now you get to see, okay, you know what? This card, as helpful as it is, maybe I should swap it out for something else that can help me if I ever get into that situation again, because it might be a lot more common than you think, especially from that point on. Because I can think of a lot of times where things that have never happened before with decks have started to, happen a lot with the decks. A lot more than it was doing before. So that's a thing. But yeah, if it wasn't for that 5k, I wouldn't run Zorga. And then Act Van, once per turn, Soul Blast, when discard 1, choose a normal order from your drop, put it to your hand into end of turn. When you play a normal order, you combine a normal order from your drop zone with a different name and Alchemy Magic with it. Combine the cost, add the effect to the back. So basically, you perform the order you play from hand first, then you perform the other order. Now, here's the thing. Technically, that cost is outside of the Soul Blast free, because it's Soul Blast 1, you can just discard an order and then bounce that order back to hand. Again, my issue being, if you don't have Soul, doesn't do anything. Which means your deck's main gimmick you can't use. Especially because maybe some games you won't see Handrino, because I can remember that happened one time. And granted, I got around that because I had a bunch of counterblast orders. But again, I say, just imagine, you don't have your Handrino, you have to get a counterblast order, but if you only have a soul blast order and drop, well, it sucks to fucking suck. You can't use your skill compared to if you were on the old Zorga. As long as you had an order in hand, you could still use it. Now, again, like, there's their own differences. Like, this Zorga can fetch orders from drop, so if you're in the situation where well, basically how this deck works now is that you don't have to keep orders in hand. As long as you have soul, you can just get the orders back. But the other deck had, you have to have at least one order in hand for the next turn. But at the same time, at least you can consistently play your orders. So, like, that's my thing with Zorga. Both of them have their own good perspectives. Both of them have their own bad perspectives. But honestly, the old Zorga, in my opinion, was better because it didn't cost a Soul Blast and didn't fuck me. So, take that as you will. The 5k is the reason I keep it because I love this deck being very aggressive on first grade 3 turn, but still. So 2 of in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck, especially because they can form a pseudo Persona Ride. Especially because, like, Persona Ride with this deck is fucking funny, because Persona Ride and what you normally do with Alchemy Magic typically hits for plus 20, and you have 2 roaming prisms in the front row. Those fuckers are hitting for 35 double crit without boosters or triggers. So it's just fun. Then move on to our orders. 2 copies of Spiritual Body Condensation. I run all my orders at 2 except for one of them. That's because, like, for those of you that like running stuff at 1, I hate running things at 1-ofs. That is my most, like, even the over. If the over wasn't as good as it was, I just wouldn't run it. But I tell you what, I hate running things at 1-ofs. It is so incredibly uncomfortable to me. It's like my worst pet peeve. If the ride deck wasn't, like, in my mind, a separate part of the deck, I would not be comfortable with running all, like, the ride line stuff at 1 copy. That would be, like, the fucking worst for me. But anyways, Spiritual Body Condensation. Play 1 to Soul Blast it. Choose a card with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard from your drop. Call to your Vanguard and gets +5 for the turn. Yeah, if you're running how the grade 2 rush works, it's Ride Husk, get any order from drop. Typically call Handrino or Shadow Cloak. Call, like, 2 grade 1s. Play this. Soul Blast your Rancor Chain, call the Rancor Chain, then have Roaming Prism in your drop zone, call it, and then give it +1 crit, and then basically you have a full board of attackers. Yeah, that's pretty much how the deck works. It's just really nice grade 2 rush. Your opponent can't really stop it without guarding a bunch. So 2 guys with Spiritual Body Condensation. It's a really good order for the early game. When late game comes around, in that game it was really good. Like I said, it was comboing well with Husk, but like typically you don't need it in the late game, but it still helps every now and again if like you need to remake your board because maybe your opponent nuked it. Then there's 2 copies of Tearful Malice. Here's how Tearful Malice is the best order ever. You can nuke Roaming Prism Dragon and then call it right back via its own skill. Just saying. So anyways, play it by retiring 2 rear guards, because if you don't remember, Alchemy Magic, you pay the cost of both first. So, for example, you Alchemy Magic, Spiritual Body Condensation, Tearful Malice. So, Tearful Malice was the order you played from drop zone. What you would do is you would Tearful Malice first, what you do is pay the cost first. So, Soul Blast 1, kill 2 of your rear guards, kill the Prism Dragons. Use Spiritual Body to call a unit, and then use Tearful Malice, send Spiritual Body, because again, that ability, go to Soul, draw a card, countercharge 1, and then call the Roaming Prism back because you Alchemy Magic. So anyways, yeah, as I said, Tearful Malice, kill 2 rear guards, shove it to Soul, draw a card, countercharge 1. All around, pretty nice. Get you Soul for Zorga, which was very helpful in that game because it definitely kept me afloat for a while. Get you hand cards to replace the rear guards you killed and countercharge 1 to replace your counterblast, and it's all around really good because it can get Prism Dragon to drop, basically get you a free call. All around Tearful Malice is definitely one of my favorite orders from Stoicheia because it's the order I am using the most in all of my Stoicheia decks. I mean, great. I think I ran it at some point in Mag. I never ran it in Flagberg because Flagberg didn't need it. I do run it in Leonhorn though, just because it's fun doing it in Leonhorn. So yeah, 2 of Tearful Malice. It's just a fun card using for me. And then 2 copies of Nectar Sensationalism. I have not used this order in forever, but basically the words I can describe it is, if you see me play this, you're already dead. I'm not even joking to you. Every time I played this, it's the turn I win. Maybe it's because I had the proper setup, or maybe it's just like coincidence, but like whenever I play this card, the turn I play it, it's game. So, grade 2 normal order, choose one of your rear guards, until end of turn it gets +5 for every 5 cards in your drop zone, and if your drop zone is 15 or more, it gets +1 crit. Okay, typically when I use this, I have 20 cards in drop, so, one unit's getting +20 in a crit, and typically the other rear guard's a Skull Dragon. So, let's see, my opponent's typically at 4 damage at this point, so I have, and I probably did the Persona Ride thing too, so I probably have a 25k double critical Skull Prism Dragon over here, followed by a other rear guard that has at least 40 with a double critical, and then my Vanguard swinging, and I run crits, and I still have the over in deck, and I've only seen half my crits, and I have like 9 cards in deck, so 1/3 of my deck is crits. Do you really want to take that chance? Do you? Do you really? Or do you just want to take it? So, yeah, Nectar Sensationalism. Basically, the second I play this, it's game over, so GG's, my man. 2 copies. Then we have our grade 3 orders. I'll go back to the grade 2 one, like, talk about it in a minute. So Death Inviting Black Magic, not my favorite order, but like, in that game, it was the second time I used that order. The first time I think it was on camera. This was the second time I used this order during that order game. It saved me because that was the turn. That was the second grade 3. Sorry, yeah, that was the second grade 3 turn, and that was the turn I finally drew a normal unit I could call. So I'm not gonna say I take back everything bad I said about this order, but I will say this: it proved me wrong. Or at least it proved to me that it had a use. So by its cost is reduced by counterbalance 1 for each card in your bind zone. Reduce the total cost of your outcome magic. So basically it counts itself. Play it by counterbalancing 4, draw 2. So when I used this, I believe I had 2 cards in my bind zone counting itself. So basically a counterbalance 2. I had the order, so counterbalance 3. But guess what? Rogue Headhunter finally came down. So it was a counterblast of total of 2. Sorry, it's a counterblast total of 3, not... Wait, yeah, sorry, it's a counterblast total of 2. Getting my math confused. To draw 2 cards and call a unit to rear. All around, Death Inviting Black Magic is decent. Like, getting the draw is helpful. The counterblast 4 is very hefty, because, like, if you have to play it too early, you've essentially lost, unless you have a bunch of tearful Malices on hand. So, take that as you will. Death Inviting Black Magic, though, is definitely one of a good order, and I do like its art, so I'll give it a 2 of. Then our last order, our last card in the deck, the only order I ran out of 3 of, and that is Kana misma. Partially because I think its art is the fucking coolest, because like it has old Zorga design with his hair and stuff like that, and it's just cool. But anyways, grade 3 normal order, play it by counterblasting 1. Choose a grade 3 or less from your drop, call it to rear guard, and if this card is a part of outcome magic, whether it was the front or the back, aka whether it was one that was bound or not, choose one of your vanguards. It continues to ban all your front row units at +5 for the turn. So basically, you combine it with Zorga on outcome magic turn, your whole front row gets +10. And if you come out with Persona Ride, +20. So you get a pseudo Persona Ride followed by another Persona Ride. That's why I love this card so much. It basically gets you a rear guard and then pumps power to your front row and makes them more dangerous. This order is amazing, and I love it, and I run it at 3-0 for it. That's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. For those of you wondering why I don't run Follow Me to the Deep Beyond You Wandering Souls, or like You Wandering Souls, I think it's called, the discard in order, get a drive, I hate that card. That is the worst order in my opinion. And the reason I think it's the worst is because it requires you to have another order in hand. And like I said, with that grade 1, it's like not worth it. Because a lot of the times with this deck, I will willingly only keep 1 order because I only need to keep 1 order because I just can Soul Blast 1, discard that order, and bounce it back. Or half the time I don't even need an order as long as I have hand cards. So which I'm guaranteed because I draw for the turn. So all around, I don't think Yi is a good order. I mean, the triple drive is fine, but like, I think the way people treat triple drive as an overweighted thing, you don't need triple drive to win a game. You can win a game without triple drive. I've done that on several occasions. What the fuck y'all talking about? Triple drive's like the best part of the game. Bullshit. Like, I honestly think the Persona is more worth the triple drive, but whatever. Point is, I don't think Yi is a good card. If you want to run Yi, go ahead, but like, I don't like that chance, like, having to keep an order in hand just to use another order. So, yeah, take that as you will. Anyways, I'm going to end it here. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, Discord, follow Twitch, and I'll see you on this one. Don't forget to stand up your vanguards.